we are here to bring you everything and anything surrounding Porsche. I'm Mike.
I'm Aaron.
And this is P-Car Talk.
Welcome to another episode of P-Car Talk. I'm Mike.
And I'm Aaron.
And we are back in the studio. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for all the love everybody's been giving us.
Yeah,
it's awesome. Just appreciate that. Got a great show. Unfortunately, we lost a legend, Hans Mezger. We're going to dedicate the first half of our show to him and just discuss his, influence, his hands that he's had on Porsche, which is pretty deep.
Extensive, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then we have a little bit, obviously Porsche is at IMSA. That's got to be discussed. That'll be in the second half of the show. And then we have 2021 Cayenne GTS coming back with the V8. So we'll discuss that. So let's go ahead and get started, right?
Yep.
Hans Mezger. What can not be said about him that's already been said, right? So this guy's a beast, first of all.
He's been there a while. The way I thought about him, I thought he was just like kind of relevant to the 917 because that's what everybody talks
exactly
about.
Like come and go, like maybe designers come and go, but he's literally been a mainstay at Porsche since really the beginning.
And if you don't know what he did, he's a Porsche engineer.
Yeah, exactly. He did all the Porsche engineering stuff, pretty much all of their race applications for the last 60-ish years, maybe.
Yeah, I mean
50-ish years.
Yeah,
just
somewhere
around that ballpark. Just to kind of be in that realm. And it all starts, so this is going to be a little bit of an education lesson for a lot of people that are listening that don't know all of his highlights. This is his highlight reel. He's obviously had his hands in a lot of things, but we're just going to try to go over the highlight reel of some of the ones you may know, and then some of the stuff you may not know about him, some interesting things about him as well. So it all starts basically with the 2-liter, the 901, before Porsche went to the 911. The original 911 engine he designed it. So, I mean, he's essentially the father of the 911, right? So that's significant alone, but that's just the beginning.
So there was only one. So then I did the 2-liter for the 901, and then obviously Peugeot was like, so that's nope. And then we got the 911 moniker.
Yeah.
And then...
Yeah, so they moved on from that because obviously the people that don't know the reason why they went from 901, and you may not even, some of the people listening I know, not even know that it was ever a 901. So the 901 was basically that was what they wanted to call their car. But Peugeot at the time, this is kind of an off topic, but just to kind of explain it, Peugeot at the time had a patent on every number basically.
Anything with a zero
in the middle, which Porsche was like, whatever. So instead of fighting them, because Porsche was still very brand new, they wanted to just go ahead and not have any type of issues. So they just changed it to 901 to 911. And that's the story behind why it became 911 instead of 901.
In a nutshell, yep.
Yeah, without getting too lengthy. But honestly, what Hans probably is most known for, and everybody knows him if you don't know anything about Hans, but the one thing you do know, the highlight reel from him, is the 917.
Yep, if you've seen a 917, you've seen some work.
Exactly. And that car was so dominant. It really was Porsche's arrival to endurance racing and road racing to show everybody how serious Porsche was as a brand and when it went to racing. Like, Porsche was already racing, but like, this is, if you can imagine the time when this was out, like in the late 60s, early 70s, this was almost bringing like a nuclear weapon to like
spaceship.
A fight. Like they were playing with the big boys. They were with Ferrari. They were a top dog in the Le Mans racing scene. They were a top dog in all, like, with this car that Hans developed.
They just had their 50 years of their first victory yesterday.
Exactly. So that's how significant that car was, and what he basically propelled them so far forward with this car into racing and really made them a main staple and a really serious contender among all the other high-level race teams with this particular car. And if you guys don't know, it's a flat 12, which is amazing.
Big boy.
Yeah. It's just a beautiful car. We've heard many of them run, seen many of them run. If you haven't seen one of these run, you're really doing yourself a disservice.
That's a Rennsport reunion experience.
Yeah.
If you haven't been there and done
it really,
that yet.
really is something magical to be heard. This car to be running, it really sounds so awesome, so unique. And it's one of, obviously we're Porsche fanboys, but it's one of those cars, even outside of Porsche, people know it when they see it, particularly the Golf livery car.
Yeah, 100%.
They see that car. They may not know it's a Porsche, but they've seen that car somewhere before.
Yep.
They don't know where they've seen it, but they've seen it. So that it's so recognizable, that shape and those livery colors. What an amazing machine. What an amazing achievement. It's still to me to this day, like thinking about that car and all the people that have driven that car and raced it, like Derek Bell, all these people, and then seeing one with all of the stuff off of it. And it's amazing to think that basically these were just
that
guys
was at Bruno's too.
yeah,
It?
these guys were just strapped to an engine essentially.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of a roll cage style thing, and it wasn't thick at all by any means.
Yeah, and that was the so-called men were men when they raced back then. There was no, if you crashed that, you weren't surviving that.
It's not like you have high visibility, so if you can imagine that thing going around Le Mans at nighttime.
Exactly. It's like essentially driving with binoculars on, like the entire time. Like you get to see out of this little porthole, driving, going down the Mulsanne Straight. I think it was clocked at like 250 miles an hour.
So, yeah.
I think Derek Bell said something about like he went 258 miles an hour down the Mulsanne Straight on this thing.
Yeah.
Back then, and then the tire technology back then too.
No, that's true.
Ugh.
Not too grippy.
Talk about balls of steel, man.
I mean, you get a sense of that too in the Le Mans movie. They did a pretty good job.
Yeah, exactly. So moving on, clearly, obviously, if he built the 917, he had a hand in the 917 Can-Am car. This car was I wouldn't be personally, but like actually solely responsible for ending the Can-Am series. And what I mean by that, it was so dominant that they actually stopped running the series because it kept finishing first on every podium over and over and over and over again. Like literally every race.
It's a good way to...
Like it won like 30 something races in a row. It just kept winning and winning. And this is the 1,000 horsepower Can-Am everybody sees. There's a couple different livery versions. One's a Sunoco one. You know, and a lot of people don't know too, I think, looking at that little car, because it's a short wheelbase car, and it's an open cab car.
Yeah.
That's 1,000 horsepower, guys.
I don't think I knew that it was 1,000 horsepower.
Yeah, it's 1,000 horsepower.
That's a lot. That's a lot for no weight.
Exactly. And it produces an insane amount of downforce as well. So it's essentially 1,000 horsepower go-kart. I mean,
and that's what they were saying. Like even the downforce for the early 917 cars, where it was so much downforce you could run it upside down, essentially. And you get to see that in the museum too.
Yeah, same thing with this car. So this car, derivative of the original 917, because this was the turbocharged one, because it was Can-Am and all that kind of stuff. So it was a little hopped up, but still the core of it was still that flat 12. And it was so dominant that basically they ended the series because
was that series? I guess I don't know too much about the series. Was it unlimited power or
that? I didn't do the research on, so I couldn't answer that question. It had to be a certain. I don't know if it was unlimited power, but there had to be some FIA regulations. I think it was open, but it was pretty much balls to the wall. But you like to think, if you play devil's advocate behind that, if it was totally wide open, somebody would have built a more powerful car, right? And to knock them off. And so maybe there was a number where it was.
1,000 seems like a lot.
Yeah. And it might not be a power thing. It might have been a displacement thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it could have been that. And which is funny, great segue into the next one. He's also responsible for the 74 RSR. And if you don't know what a 74 RSR looks like, it's pretty much in the most classic livery with the huge fenders, the big ass wing on the back. Yep. It almost looks kind of funky, but that's the RSR, the Martini livery one that he basically developed as well for road racing. They threw a turbo on it, and it was dominant. Like, it also won its class at Le Mans. It was unstoppable. This basically was the segue, which we'll talk about next, is to the 935, essentially. This was the pre-935, this 74 RSR. One of the interesting things, this is a fun fact that I didn't know, but I found out in research, the FIA rules for that class of the car was it had to either be under 3 liters. So that means it couldn't be 3 liters. It had to be under 3 liters, whatever that class was. So Hans developed this engine to be a 2.996 liter. If you find the Easter egg in that, I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So he had it 0.004, whatever that displacement number would be. I guess it would be cc's or whatever it would be, to be less than the 3 liter, so they could qualify for FIA rules that obviously race this and win championships and what have you. And this thing was dominant. I mean, it's so menacing. It's probably
seems like a theme with when he builds a motor.
Yeah, exactly, right? So I think when you build a reputation like that, obviously, no wonder why Porsche continued to call on him for each race application of motor that he had. Moving forward, 935, as I discussed, these are the derivative of the 935 Kramer cars, like that were so dominant in the 70s. Again, dominant is the key word here. These cars were not unbelievable. And 935 race cars are some of the most coveted, collected race Porsche 911s right now.
If you've seen a Martini livery, it's most likely been either on 917 or
Adam Carolla's 935. Like, you've seen these cars out there. These cars, I mean, there's only a handful of them out there, but they're incredibly collectible, and they have tons of race provenance, tons of race history.
You can look up Moby Dick and you'll find them.
And then they also have, they had a street application 935, which they made like 6 or 7 of. Of course, Seinfeld has one. I think we saw it at Luftical.
He's also got the RSR.
Yeah, we saw it at Luftical, which is a beautiful, like, Canepa did the restoration, I think, or what do they call that? Not restoration, but redone, or like not totally restoring the car, but just kind of brought it back to life, breathed some life into it. But yeah, he's responsible for that car too. Like, right when you think this guy just keeps coming out with hits one after another, right?
They're probably like, hey, what's Hans got?
Yeah, exactly. Hey, what are your thoughts on this?
You busy?
Hey, bro, like, what do you think about, we're going racing, we kind of need this is the rules. He's like, holler at me in a week, I got something for you.
Got something in the back.
So he comes back, and then obviously, where I'm going with this is F1 cars, people were TAG and all these other places that wanted to basically go racing and use engines. They employed him in his, knowledge to come behind it and help them develop an engine. So he developed the 1.5 liter V6 TAG turbo for F1, 1,000 horsepower again.
Which those, do you remember the company's name that's putting those in 911s?
I don't. I know. I remember seeing them at. Yeah.
So there's a company doing that.
Yeah, but that engine's derived from this.
Yeah. Which is
so
cool.
that's, and the cool thing about that, which is nuts to think about this, right? Everybody thinks about that displacement, 1.5 liter producing 1,000 horsepower. That's pretty nuts.
Yeah. Tolerances in that.
Yeah.
Insane.
Yeah. So the engineering that has to go into that, and just the duration and the cams and all the stuff, that everything has to be so precise, obviously. I mean, you're racing F1, you're on the edge.
All the time.
Exactly. So, and he was making tolerances and making engines, and he was called upon to make this type of engine for that racing. And they sold them to, multiple teams like Williams, McLaren used this engine, like a lot of people were using this engine. He was just the person that helped develop it, and then they sold the engine. I don't know if you guys knew that, but that happens a lot in F1. There's an engine supplier, and then it goes into a certain, and they do contracts, and then it's there. This one's more recent, this next one.
Yeah, I was surprised by this.
And I was blown away by this, but I didn't know. But the more you think about it, it actually makes sense. And what I mean by that is...
yeah, because he'd be like, hey, who's got the best track record?
Yeah. And the reason why I say it makes sense is because obviously it was developed by Williams, co-developed with Williams. And Williams does F1, Hans did F1. So, without further ado, not to keep you guys in too much suspense, the new DLS Singer engine, Hans helped build that engine that's in that car. Now you understand why that makes a little bit of sense, because Williams helped develop that engine. Williams is in F1. Hans had been in F1, so there was a relationship from the past where he helped probably develop an engine there. So he was called upon to help do this. Rob Dickinson reached out, obviously to Williams, and then Williams called upon Hans to help them develop an engine for the DLS Singer.
That's pretty cool.
So, modern, I guess, obviously it's an old school car, but it's a modern take on an air-cooled engine, obviously. And obviously Hans was the guru, talking all the way back to the 1965 901 2-liter. I mean, he's been in the business forever. So, of course, they're going to call on him. He did all of this racing. He did all of this stuff. And really cool that Singer I don't know if it was Singer's call, but maybe it was Williams' call, but they reached out to Williams, and then Williams maybe reached out to Hans or whoever, however
some way it happened.
Yeah, however it worked out, the legend was involved in it. You know, and unfortunately he has passed now. He lived a long life. He was 90 years old.
Yeah, almost 91.
Yeah. But I think it's interesting that even something more new to all of us that we haven't seen is still going to have his
It's weird that
stamp
nobody's
on it.
talked about it. Everybody's like, oh, Williams built it. Why wouldn't you say Hans helped it? Because that's even more. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
I would think so too, but maybe contractually, because it was contracted to Williams,
Or he didn't, or his
and
part
then
wasn't
Williams
his,
subcontracted to Hans.
his part.
He could have just been a consultant.
Yeah.
You know, who knows at that
Sounds
age
good.
where they're just like, hey, this is what we want to do with this engine. He's like, you probably don't want to do this. So maybe since Williams is actually funding it and they're using him as a consultant, I'm sure his name is on some stuff, but I agree with you. Like, why not hitch his wagon to the Williams wagon just because Hans is so significant to say, hey, not only is it a DLS from Singer, and Singer's already awesome by itself, and Williams is awesome, and Hans is awesome. So now we have this trifecta of awesomeness happening with this car. Not that car needs any help.
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you? Yeah, that makes sense. So you think it's a test in engineering. Here's the best engineer we could find.
Exactly. And also, like, I think the history behind him developing air-cooled engines, too, I think would be able to say, and again, that car doesn't need any help selling.
No.
But I think it would be, for the buyers, it would have been a cool thing. And I'm sure, who knows, maybe that does happen.
It may happen.
That probably happens in intimate conversations because
if you're a
obviously...
buyer, like, hey, not only did Williams work on this, but hey.
Yeah, Hans helped develop the engine. And we're not privy to those conversations, obviously.
Not yet. Maybe one day, but not yet.
So all of you guys that have a DLS on the way that's coming, kudos to you guys because he helped develop that engine. So they're still going to have a modern piece of history, essentially, just because of that. And as we all know, not to say, anything goes unsaid, but those were the highlights. Obviously, we all know, or maybe not know, so we'll just cover it real quickly. He was, the Mezger engine was going into basically 997 GT3s, dot twos is where it ended, and then 997 turbos, it was going into those cars. So it was being developed in those cars. Now, to clarify, that engine, he's not like responsible for the entire generation. It's just the GT cars and the turbo cars of those generations that he was responsible for those motors. And those were race application engines, which makes sense why those would be in those cars because he did race application.
Yeah.
So
he was the man for the job.
Exactly. So that's why all of that stuff is connected. And everybody raves. It's like, oh, I have a Mezger engine.
Yeah, that's why you see Mezger everywhere on tags and things.
I have a Mezger engine GT3. I have a Mezger engine 997. And they are a little bit more coveted because of Hans and his racing provenance and the things that he was able to do. And they're known for their bulletproofness. Yeah. They're known for their toughness.
Well, I mean, if you're building race applications, if you're using it as a street car, then, I mean,
yeah. Well, that's the theory behind everything with Porsche does anyways in general. But just because he had such a legacy, it's a little bit more, I guess, people covet it a little bit more because it has Hans's blueprint that he did something with it. And a lot of those engines, like the 997 GT3s and the turbos and the 996 turbos and the GT3s, those are derived from the GT1 race car engine blocks. Like, that's basically what that block was. Obviously,
which is pretty cool.
All the things that went back into that block in the GT1 race car is much different than the street application cars, but the DNA's there, like the core of it's there. So what a legend. And really, and I'm sure Porsche knows this and they have been celebrating it. So it's not like there's a lack of them not like talking about Hans or any of that kind of stuff. I mean, he's been celebrated by many, many people over the years, not just because he's passed now, but even in the past when he was alive, he was still coveted as a genius.
Yeah, he was even recently, they recently did like a top 5 with him, like one of those last things.
And Porsche knows that they owe a lot to him from a racing aspect. Like, he really, really was the guy for a really, really, really long time for them in almost everything they did race application wise. I think it's impressive that one person has been able to turn all of that out.
Yeah. Or at least he was the head of the team, or
Exactly.
however he actually fell in it. But that's
exactly.
crazy. That he was,
exactly. I mean, not in theory, like he's the one guy only, like
the only
wrenching.
one.
Yeah, wrenching. But you're
So,
absolutely right.
yeah.
Like at least his ideas and his thought process and the team he was able to assemble, he had the right mind to continue to win for so long with so many cars.
So he didn't develop anything for the 911. I mean, until the 996 again. Like there was no motor, or just wasn't spoken about. Like was he just exclusively with the race teams?
I think he was just in the race applications and helping racing
That's a big
engineering
jump
development.
too. I mean, going from like the street car to like, hey, you want to hop in on this race team thing?
Well, I think obviously like a guy at his level probably never leaves Porsche. Obviously,
Yeah.
he's always probably there doing something. It maybe just came to that scene. You got to think about it this way. Think about the time Porsche was getting into GT racing, right? GT3s didn't exist.
Yep.
996 GT3s. You're going to go IMSA racing. You're going to go do all this endurance racing. Well, the stuff you used to do back in the day.
Yep.
There was a little bit of a hiatus there. So who do you call on? Well, you call on your old gunslinger, the guy who used to get it done back in the day. And you're like, hey, Hans, heads up. I know it's been a while since we've been doing endurance racing and we were in IMSA, but we're going to enter in. We're going to make this new street car. It's going to be a GT application, like race car for the public. And then we want to race it and we need to get it homologated. We need to do this. What are your thoughts? Do you want to lead the team? I'm sure he's like, let's do this.
Yep.
So it makes perfect sense when you start to break it down on all of those levels of why he was brought in. I don't want to say back in because he probably never left.
No.
But more of kind of when Porsche was like getting more serious again, more modernly about racing. Not that they've ever left racing, but in the sense of like, hey, let's go win some championships. Let's start to get back in this. Hey, we're making a GT car for the road, which they had never done. Like, let's start to pump some of these out. Of course, they're going to call on the guy who's their race guru.
Which is cool.
So kudos to him. We appreciate everything he's done for us, as consumers. All of this history,
Race fans.
all this history he's been able to have his hands on. I'm sure Porsche loved it. Everything he did for them. What a great guy. Really involved in this motorsport side of things. And we have the cool stuff we have with Porsche because of him.
Yeah.
So he would be dearly missed. I know I'll miss him. I didn't know him personally, but obviously his work speaks for itself. Mm-hmm. And dude's a stud. I mean, no way else to put it, right?
Yep.
So just wanted to give you guys a little bit of background on him because there are some little Easter eggs and cool things in there that we didn't know.
Or maybe you didn't know any of it. Now you do.
Exactly. And wanted to pay tribute to one of the greats. And we'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back with some more recent stuff.
Yep.
Make sure that you check out Soul Performance Products because they are a sponsor of PCAR Talk. They have a great exhaust. We are running it on the Turbo S. It's handmade. It's made in the U.S., made by Americans, sold to everybody else in the world. So very few products are still made in the U.S., and they make exhaust products for every vehicle that you can think of, not just Porsche. So please check them out. They're a great sponsor of the show. We love their products. A lot of other people that we respect as well is running their products on their car, and they're battle-tested. They're race-proven. If you're looking for a solid, quality American product, definitely check out Soul Performance Exhaust. Now back to the show.
We're back from break. And let's discuss this a little bit because it's news for everybody in the racing world. It's not new news because everybody was kind of the bombshell went off. But people that aren't into racing, there's a lot of people that don't really follow racing that listen to us as well. So let's cover this. Porsche is out of IMSA.
Yep.
At least for the time being.
Just the GTLM class, right?
Yeah. And what that means is they have announced, I think it was June 5th, that they announced that they will not be having a 2021 season factory race Porsche team. The significance behind that is huge.
Yeah.
They're claiming due to coronavirus and funding that they're not seeing them being able to carry on for 2021. Now, they didn't say this is forever. They openly said also that they hope this is a temporary thing. Obviously didn't get in the weeds to share with the public of why other than just coronavirus and funding, and that's the way it was going to be. So let's talk about this topic for a little bit because people like us, and I know there's a lot of people, and it's kind of niche, but the racing world, all of this stuff, as we talked earlier with Hans, a lot of this stuff is derivative, so it makes its way into consumer grade applications.
Yep.
It makes its way into enthusiasts like us. So their race program, not showing a force, not being out there, not having a booth, not doing their thing. What are your thoughts behind this? What do you
taking a year
think?
off to go hybrid?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
To do the
Yep, they're gonna have full
the hypercar class. Is that what you're thinking?
Probably a hypercar, but then like hybrid, as in like they'll do something. I think they're gonna do something.
So you're
with the
saying
911.
coming back to GTLM, but with a hybrid 911
Yep.
to race.
Yep.
Like a hybrid GT car to
Makes
race.
sense.
I never thought of it like
Because
that.
I think if they're gonna do that and they're a street car, they're gonna need something to race with, and if they have an excuse to not spend money, I mean that's a big pro. That program's not exactly cheap to run.
Yeah, it almost opened.
year.
It almost opened a door for them that they didn't have to do. I mean, it sounds bad to use it as an excuse, but it's an excuse for them to say, "Okay, hey, we're going to step back
Yep.
for a minute and maybe
If we don't have to maintain something we're not using in
redirect
the
those
future,
millions of
yeah.
dollars into this." That's one way I thought about it. I never thought about it that way.
I do see that. I mean, the hypercar class is definitely a thing now. We got regulations on it. Mm-hmm. It's happening.
But Porsche still hasn't announced whether they're participating or not in that. I believe they will be, even though they haven't announced it. From a selfish standpoint, I think this is really detrimental for people like us who like to go to the races.
Yeah.
And then we go to these races. Granted, there's still going to be
there'll be Porsches there, customer racing.
There's going to be
it just won't
customer
the
racing.
factory
It won't
team.
be the LM class. It'll just be the GTD class. So they always sound a little different. You know, they're not as nasty as.
Yeah, that's true. They are a little bit more streetish, I guess.
Well, I think part of their regulation is they have to run some type of muffler system. The RSR is straight pipes.
Yeah, I'm aware.
So
I've been standing next to that track
there's
too many times.
And if you guys don't know, there's a significant difference between the two sounding. Like
That
at
newer-
any point,
yeah.
you can place the GTLM car on track.
Yeah, that newer side exhaust they had. Whew.
Yeah, it was pretty brutal on the eardrums.
We'll get to hear it a couple more times, but yeah.
So let's get a little bit deeper here. Do you think? So based off of, I already probably know your answer, but I still want you to answer the question. So based off of what you said, are the employees that were basically on this race team doing all this race stuff, the engineers, the drivers, what have you, are they being redirected, you think, behind the scenes to something else? Or are they going to be kind of turned loose? What do you think is going to happen there?
But it depends on how serious they take the racing. Are they really going to not come back in the next coming years? Or
Yeah, I guess it depends how long the hiatus is, right?
Exactly. It depends on how serious it is. Is it just a year? Are they going to take those engineers that would have been?
Is it 5 years? Is it
Yeah.
3 years? What is it going to be, right?
And I'm sure that what their premise is, if they can keep people, I'm sure they'll try their best to keep people in there and doing something else, or maybe they need to turn up the focus on something else that they're doing. Maybe they do move to a different project
Yeah.
just for the time being to keep them in there and then bring them back in when they decide to go racing in that class again, or whatever they decide to do in the future.
Yeah, I was playing like devil's advocate with this. I thought about it two ways, right? Maybe if it really is a money thing, then they just let everybody go and do their own thing. But on the flip side of that, you obviously want to keep all of those proprietary secrets to you. So maybe you want to keep them employed and just redirect their energy somewhere else within Porsche.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to lose any of those trade secrets to maybe a competing team.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess you know, like, well, this is how we used to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And maybe somebody who is behind in the racing scene that's continuing on now has moved forward leap years because now they've taken the people that you've taught to do things.
Only if they re-involve themselves back in that class, though, too. I mean, if they're fully out, they may be fully out
Yeah.
and done with the GTLM stuff. So
That could
maybe,
be it,
maybe
too.
that doesn't matter. And then
I think and I was looking at this more of, I know there's a lot of people that go into a race team, obviously the engineers, all the people that help with the cars,
Marketing,
all of that
everything,
stuff. But I was specifically thinking about the drivers here because a driver's career is on a timeline. So if you're a Porsche factory driver at the minute, like guys like Nick Tandy, all these guys, Vanderhoef, all those guys.
Oh, bam, Thor.
Yeah, those guys are thinking, are they in a position now where, hey, I want to continue to race. I'm still at the peak of my career. I can't wait for you for 4 more years, Porsche, to do something. Like, let me go and let me still go race somewhere. Like, I still want to win Le Mans.
Yeah,
I still want to go do these things. Like,
you and I
what do
kind
you
of talked
do?
about this on offline. I think what they'll do is anybody racing GT2. I don't know how. It's still racing.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're going to try to funnel as many people as they can on a customer racing team.
Okay.
Like normally they have a pro driver.
So like
on those
maybe
teams
like
anyways.
like you said before, I do remember that conversation where you're saying maybe some of these guys end up with Wright's Motorsports or
kind of like
wherever.
what Chris was telling us about. Normally they'll have a pro driver somewhere.
So maybe they just sprinkle all these pro drivers into all these other customer
Keep
teams
keep
and
'em
keep them running 911s essentially.
Or keep them over in Europe doing stuff. I mean, there's a few classes there that's different. So.
Yeah, just push them all to the Manti team essentially, which is
that'd be
still
fun.
Porsche.
Do some endurance racing, which I know that those guys get over there and do that and kind of under the radar. I didn't know they did that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's concerning, and as a fan, I'm being selfish, I guess, just voicing my opinion. And I'm sure there's I've heard from a lot of our friends and fans that listen to us and things like that have messaged us and things about how sad everyone is.
Now we have a little camp of people that always go to the races and things. So
Well, I don't think that's going to stop. I think the difference is you just don't have your hero right anymore. Yeah. Again, Porsche's still going to be there, so now we're going to be cheering more for these customer teams like Wright's Motorsports and all these other places that want to stand up. Who knows what this does too? Maybe more teams get stood up because of this.
Maybe Porsche still funds them a little bit differently. Maybe they get a little bit more money this year. Maybe they're able to do it a little different.
I think this goes a little bit deeper, rewinding a little bit to the Corona thing with Porsche. I think we talked about this. Obviously, this is a thing at total speculation. We didn't really get any confirmation, but we understand how the industry works on that end. They were due to secure sponsorship by beginning of June.
Yep.
This announcement comes at the beginning of June. So ipso facto, you start to tie those together.
Yeah,
Porsche,
they just changed watch sponsors, and so
Porsche has only raced one endurance race this year in Daytona. Then kind of Corona hit.
Yep, Hugo Boss stepped up too.
So all of that money, it's not like those places get a refund. And now there's going to be 3 IMSA races at the end of the year.
They're not getting all the TV
so they're
time
getting,
or any of that stuff.
They're getting and they're not getting all those eyes at the track, and who knows what that's even going to look like. Are they going to even allow fans at the end of the year still?
Well, we don't know.
So from a sponsorship standpoint, I think they had a hard time obtaining sponsors that were willing to commit to the 2021 season because they were saying, we don't know what this is going to look like, because look what happened this year. You guys have ran one race. You cost us, let's just make a number up. We spent $15 million with you to put our name on the car, whatever, $20 million, make up the number, it doesn't matter, whatever it is. And we've seen one race. And you're going to maybe run 3 more this year. Maybe, they'll be televised, but maybe there won't be
those
fans.
Manufacturers, a lot of them, they're luxury stuff. They got to think about themselves too.
Of course. And now they don't have marketing dollars because people haven't been. So now their marketing budget is probably smaller.
Everybody's conservation.
Everything is connected. So now they're not spending money on racing. So they're throttling back. So where I'm going with this is maybe it was a thing where they were unable to secure the sponsorship they needed.
Yep.
And that's what they mean by, hey, because of Corona, because technically it is because of Corona that they couldn't secure maybe those sponsorships for next season.
Yep.
And maybe we can get back to a normal racing season next year. And maybe by midsummer next year, when it's time to secure sponsorship again for the following year, for 2022, maybe they'll be back already, because then they'll be able to secure that sponsorship. That's what I'm hoping happens.
Yeah, that sounds like a promising, hopeful
I'm being
scenario.
optimistic because I don't know what the makeup of the race scene is going to look like due to this pandemic situation.
Have we heard of anybody else not coming back for GTLM besides Porsche? I figured it would be kind of a domino effect if one big manufacturer pulled out.
I really don't think so, because there isn't that many left anyways.
That's true.
So, Ford pulled last year, which is this season. They made the announcement last year they won't be racing this season. So
good for them. They didn't cost them anything this year, I guess.
But, and also not making the car either. So they went hand in hand for them.
Prices just went up.
I'm glad you brought that up though, because okay, so clearly Porsche's still going to make GT3s and GT3 RSs. Mm-hmm. Do you think that has any impact on that hero car because now they're not factory racing that car on the
Still
market?
think it's fun. I don't know that
I think the brand is too strong where it doesn't matter. Like if they don't, like they've built the GT brand so strong since they started back in like 04 with it, with the 996 GT3 and racing in all those classes and having the cup cars and all that stuff like that, the race cars. I think they've built it up over the last 15 years strong enough to where the GT car alone stands up on its own.
I mean,
whether
if you have a
there's
GT3,
a race,
you're almost more rare than a GT3 RS right now.
yeah, like if they're racing or not, I think they still hold their own.
Yeah,
I don't think they're gonna. I don't think
that.
they're not gonna. People are not gonna not buy GT3 cars because there's not.
Yeah, I don't think their full base was just based on.
And don't take
racing.
this the wrong way, guys. I would bet like of the 2,500 of them that sell, 50% of those people, the 1,250 people that buy them, don't even know what IMSA is and doesn't even know that there is a race series or any of that kind of crap.
They just like the car. Yeah.
Exactly. It's more of a status thing. They know it's rare. They're not going to lose money. Like da-da-da-da. They maybe they watch one race a year. They're one of those people. And I'm not saying you're a poser because of that. I'm just saying they're just not into it. So I don't think it matters.
Yeah, I don't think they're losing sales because they're pulling out of the series.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It is saddening, obviously, all the way around, like as far as everybody who goes to the track. And even if you don't go to the track and you like to watch at home, whatever.
Yeah, air conditioning.
You like to support.
Yeah,
you like to support the team. It's just going to be strange to see a Le Mans next year. Hopefully, that we'll have a full race season. That a Porsche factory team is not competing for an overall win.
Yeah.
You know, at least for me, it's going to be strange to just, wow, okay, cool.
Yeah, I guess we got to pick our customer racing.
And then what does that do for racing, right?
Yeah.
Like, not even just because of Porsche, just as more teams have pulled out, and then not just Porsche, you know, focusing on all the other factory teams that are pulling out of IMSA. And we talked to Wes about this offline too. There's a lot of people pulling out of IMSA. What's that doing for endurance racing? Are we going to see a lull here?
Well, maybe. I mean, IMSA wasn't always a thing, so
Yeah.
maybe there'll be a new birth of something else. I don't know. Another race series.
I mean, endurance racing has always been around, right? So it's always been a thing, and you always...
Yeah, but just different versions. Yeah, that's a good question. Whether or not
Yeah.
it's just going to be the big stuff. If you're just going to watch Le Mans, the Nürburgring, and Spa, all the big 24-hour stuff, and not really...
Yeah, I think it takes a lot of like the air out of that sail, in my personal opinion. But who knows?
If you're the other manufacturers, who do you chase now? Because you've always chased Porsche.
That's true. Or maybe they look at it like, finally.
I'm gonna get a win this
finally.
year.
It can be an asterisk next to their name when they win.
Exactly.
Porsche did not compete this year.
Like it was a wet lap or something. Yeah.
Porsche did not compete this year.
We weren't here. It doesn't count.
But yeah, nevertheless, okay, so enough on that topic. So sad to see it. 2021 Cayenne GTS, bringing back the 4-liter V8. If you guys didn't know, they were running a V6 twin turbo.
I knew that.
Yeah. So they're bringing it back, as the early GTSs were running a naturally aspirated, actually, V8. This one's going to be a twin turbo. What are your thoughts on this? Why do you think this is happening?
Because everybody likes V8s. That's why. I don't know.
That's the obvious reason, but...
It just, even driving those cars, there's plenty of power in them. But I don't know. Something about the V8 that's just... Maybe they're
Do you think it's more of a sound thing? Do you think it's more of
I think it's probably, well, being the GTS line, there probably could be a sound thing. Maybe the V8 is more efficient than the V6. Maybe they just couldn't. I mean, obviously, we talked about those other motors going larger liters.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe
they just thought it just belonged more.
Reliability.
Like,
maybe
it's a heavy car, so maybe it needs a little bit more grunt.
Maybe there's different reliability versus on the V8s.
Yeah.
Maintenance. I don't know.
I think this circles back to that thing we talked about on a few podcasts before, which was that interesting tad bit of information in the Europe scene where they're going to be upping the displacement of the cars. Maybe this is the beginning of that.
Maybe. Yeah.
Where they're just kind of getting ahead of it now. It's not required, but they're upping the displacement because of their horsepower numbers. If you don't remember, it's on a past podcast we talked about that they're changing, which is a strange thing. The emissions is going to still be strict, but what they're changing now, the EPA is changing, and this is worldwide. If you have a certain amount of horsepower, you have to have a certain amount of liters to back that up. Meaning, like, so per liter, whatever you have can only produce so much horsepower. So these high horsepower, small liter engines are going to be a thing of the past.
That might change Ferrari.
Yeah.
A lot.
So, I mean, they're already going V8, so they might just make the bore bigger.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things. It's a strange thing that the regulators are putting in place against the manufacturers, where they're saying, hey, you can only have so many horsepower per liter, back to where you had these small, efficient, high horsepower cars. Not happening anymore. That's done. Excuse me. I think it's pretty interesting. So some interesting thing about this actual GTS, super heavy car, right? So with the sports chrono pack, it does 0 to 60 in 4.2 seconds. That's ridiculous.
It's moving.
I think this thing has 453 horsepower or something like that, something wild like that. But obviously, Porsche's the.
It's just a GTS. I mean, the turbo S. That's when you start getting some real power.
Yeah, the Porsche has figured out how to obviously be a master manipulator with launches and all that kind of stuff. So obviously that launch control is really good. All-wheel drive, obviously. Is this one of those things where, again, we're flipping around all of these different engine things, and does it even matter really at the end of the day?
I think they're looking for the future. So I don't know. Yeah. I don't know that they're. I mean, maybe they are. Maybe they just didn't like the V6. There's something about it. I don't know why it's not a regression, I guess.
No, it's a definite push forward.
Does it align? Because I'm not 100% sure on the liter size of the turbos. Does it align with the turbo liter size? Is it just?
I didn't look into that, to be honest with you. I don't think all of that stuff is out. I think there's just kind of
I wonder if it's going to be like the GTS has the same turbos and V8 that the turbo has. The turbo's tuned up. The Turbo S is tuned up. Kind of like make a little bit of a lineup.
It could be like we discussed before, where there's
kind of how they're doing the Carrera.
Exactly. A little bit more linearity between the line of okay, let's not have to do so much weird crap with all of these.
We don't need a V6 here and then a V8 twin turbo here.
Exactly.
And then let's the hybrid here.
Yeah, let's streamline this a little bit better. Let's be smart about this. I think it's.
I wonder if they've hybrided the V8 yet too, because I don't think we've seen a hybrid V8 that I know of and that I remember.
I don't think so. I think
it's always been that 2.9 liter they were running with.
Yeah,
so
maybe
they finally cracked that.
It could be. It could be that. Yeah, it's. Just when you think, you see from Porsche, we have all this Taycan talk, full EV. Now we're putting a big hunkin' V8 back into something in 2021.
Right. Yeah.
I just think the counterpoint of that is interesting to see. Within the same company, you have so many different dynamics of things are happening. You have a full EV, and that's what's happening. Now you're dumping, not even out yet, in 2021, you're dumping a big V8 in something. It's just kind of funny where it's like, hey, we're going this way.
Yeah, we're going strict emissions, and then maybe not.
This thing's going to drink gas and do whatever it's going to do. And
still got to have a fun side of things, though, too, just because you're having a full EV.
Yeah. Interesting enough. That's all about I have. Do you have anything that you want to discuss before we...
About Cayenne, pretty much wraps it up.
Well, that's pretty much all we have. Thank you guys for joining us. We want to thank you guys so much for everything that you're doing for us, subscribing, obviously on YouTube and subscribing on the podcast.
We're seeing some bumps.
Yeah, we're seeing some upticks, and when that's all thanks to you guys supporting us. As you guys get back out there and make sure you guys are safe. We love you guys, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
That's it. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of PCAR Talk. Connect with us on Instagram at PCAR Talk or online at pcartalk.com.